Welcome back. So now we're on Genesis chapter 1, and we're starting with verse 14. Uh, Quick recap. We saw uh, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The earth became without form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." Light was. He saw that the light was good. He divided the light from the darkness. Called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Evening and the morning were the first day. There's this establishment of time, establishment of delineation in time for a day, of there being an evening and a morning, a night and a day, or a light time, a time of darkness and a time of night of light, if you will. Day 2, he says, "Let there be a firmament." He separates these, puts a firmament in the midst of waters. He divides waters from waters, and he creates a firmament that divides the waters from the waters. And he calls that firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning was the second day. So there's this heaven that's been defined or established. And then God said, "Let the waters," on the third day, "let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place." He calls the dry land to appear from those waters that are on the earth, as it were. And he calls that dry land earth, and the waters that he gathered, he calls seas. We may also call them oceans, but he calls them seas, according to the scripture. And God saw that it was good. Then it says, and God he spoke forth and said that, "Let the earth, that is this land, bring forth grass and herbs and fruit yielding seed, and fruit which has the seed inside itself upon the earth." And it was so. And after it was so, he says, God saw that it was good after it came about. And that completed the third day. So on the third day, there's just 2 declarations of things being good. And now we are starting the 4th day. So verse 14, and it says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be signs, and let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years." So now there's this delineation of different declarations of time and measurements of time, if you will, actually. And so he says, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night." Now you would think, it's like, well, wasn't that what was happening during the first day? That there's this, well, the difference here to me between the first day and here in this 4th day is he's speaking. It says, "Let there be lights," while on the first day it was light singular. It was, "Let there be light." And there's this light that he divided from the darkness. Now, on the 4th day, after he's created the separation from the waters, this firmament, as it calls it, or expanse in some translations, and he divides the waters from the waters, and he calls this firmament heaven, and then he causes the dry ground, the dry land, to appear from the waters that are under the firmament, so it appears, and so you would think but I mean, that's an assumption on my part. I don't know, because it doesn't explicitly say that. It doesn't clarify, but it does say that he calls this dry land to appear, and he calls the dry land earth, and then the waters that he gathered he called seas. So yes, it's like this dry land appears from the seas, or as he called it, the seas, these waters that are on the earth. And then he speaks forth, he saw that it was good, and he speaks forth grass herbs yielding seed, and fruit trees yielding fruit which have the seed inside it, which is the definition of a fruit. It's like, it's a fruit if it has a seed inside the fruit. If the seed doesn't have a seed inside the fruit, then it's not a fruit tree, or it's not fruit. It's an herb or some other type of vegetable or some other type of plant. So, but then that's the third day. And now here we are in the fourth day, and he says, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let there be signs for seasons, for days and years. Let's continue. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven. Well, no, I'm skipped, sorry. Verse 15 is what I just read. Verse 16. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Now we know that these stars, well, actually we'll start off with the two great lights. He says the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, we would call that the sun. And the lesser light to rule the night, we would call that the moon. Now what's interesting is the moon actually does not actually produce light like the sun does. The sun actually produces light, but the moon actually, as we know scientifically, been stated, the moon actually reflects the light of the sun. So it's interesting. So he calls it, he says it here, verse 16, God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And it says he made the stars also. And the stars, we know, are other suns in other galaxies. But they appear to us as stars, these bright lights. And lights, bright being relative. But they're these lights that we can see in the sky very clearly, or more clearly at nighttime if you don't have what we call light pollution, depending on where you live. Light pollution being bright lights from a city, and being so bright that you can't so clearly see the stars. Where I live, we don't have so much of that, so I'm able to see the stars at night very more clearly. So verse 17, it says, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. That is, these two great lights, which I will even come to conclude that that's the sun and the moon. So they give light upon the earth. Both of those, the sun and the moon, gives light upon the earth in their time. Verse 18, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Then verse 19, that was verse 18. Verse 19 says, in the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So on this fourth day, God makes these two great lights. The greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. And to divide the light from the darkness. That's really interesting because it's like this repetition or repeating of the first day where God created the light. And so it says, and God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And so making that connection of here where it says, verse 18, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. It reminds me of day 1. And there was verse 4 of chapter 1. It says, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So there's this division of light and darkness in day 1. And here now that we're in day 4, and to rule over the day, these lights, these great great lights, these two great lights that he's creating, as we call it, establishing that's the sun and the moon. They're to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And it's interesting because you think about nighttime. Nighttime, I mean, God called night the dark. He called the darkness night. I think right here, there is this illusion or admission or evidence of the acknowledgement that the moon is not a light in and of itself. That is, it does not produce its own light. It reflects the light of the sun. Now, the sun actually produces its own light. They call it a big ball of fire. That's this constant burning going on, and it's producing this bright light. And here the scripture is actually acknowledging the fact that there's this division, this separation, dividing of light from darkness, even in the daytime period, in the period of a day, I should say, which we saw in verse 4 during day 1 when God said he's going to divide the light from the darkness. There's this another division of light and darkness, and it's like at nighttime it is dark, but if the moon is shining, or that is, if the moon is reflecting the sunlight, then we will see a light, and there's still this separation or division of light and darkness as we see it, as we move around at nighttime. And we can move around better when the light, the lesser light, the moon, is shining or reflecting the sunlight. Now, if it's not, then it's a bit darker. And yet there's this separation still of light and darkness. That brings up so many thoughts, actually, for me. When I think about that, it's like when the moon is not shining a light, that is, it's not reflecting the light. We know the earth is round, or spherical. It's a sphere. And we have this time period that we call new moon, and then we have a time period that we call full moon. And when you look in the sky and you see the moon at nighttime, and when you have this, what they call full moon, is when the sphere of the moon is reflecting, that the part that we can see is reflecting fully the light that's from the sun. When it's a new moon, the sphere of the moon is reflecting none of the light that would hit it or be able to reflect off of it or upon it from the sun. And that would happen when the moon is basically on the one side of the earth and the sun is on the other side. So it's like the earth is right now, would be like, as it were, between the moon and the sun. And we have eclipse, which is a whole nother, but I'm getting all scientific. But anyway, it's just interesting thinking about recognizing that here the scripture clearly clarifies and attests to, that is, it does not contradict what we know scientifically to be true from studying the earth and studying life around us. It is testifying here that yes, there are these two objects that God created. One that's producing light, and it's a greater light, and it's part of the day. And then this lesser light that's part of the night that still shines light upon the earth. Both of them shining light upon the earth. Both of them dividing or causing there to be a dividing of light and darkness. Though one is creating, or not creating, but producing, I mean, use the right term, it's not creating light as such, it's producing light. And the other is reflecting light. And that's a whole nother thought process, idea. It's like to produce something as opposed to reflect something. Yeah, there's a lot there. I go down that rabbit hole, but yes, but so verse 19, well, verse 18. So it's just interesting to me seeing that it says, "And to divide the light from the darkness." God has called these two great lights to rule over the day and the night, and they're still taking this action of dividing light from darkness. That's interesting on so many levels, but we'll move forward. And then it says in verse 19, "In the evening and the morning were the fourth day." So this is now the completion of the fourth day period since the beginning and since the creation of the heaven and the earth, in this clarification of how the heaven and the earth were created. I didn't bring up this point last time, but recognizing it's like verse 1, it says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth." It is just established statement. And then verse 2, it talks about the earth being without, becoming, really, as I think we established that in the first session, that early session. That term can actually be translated became, in the past tense. It became without form and void. And then it says, "And darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." So it's then begins this time period, verse 3. It says, "And God said, let there be light, and there was light." And now it's like, it could be interpreted as we read these verses, that God is now starting to delineate or explain how the heaven became. Because like we said previously, when God made the firmament and divided the waters from the waters, he called that firmament heaven. And I guess I'm not sure if I did delve into that thought process and making that connection of God called that firmament that separated or divided the waters from the waters heaven, and how that term heaven relates right back to verse 1, where it says, "In the beginning God created the heaven." And then we see later on, even in the next day, that third day, God talks about this dry land that he called forth from the waters that were on the earth. But he calls that dry land earth. And so it's like he's calling like we do. We call the dirt earth. But then there is the earth as a sphere, as a full planet, as an entity in and of itself, which is really different from the dirt earth that we also call earth or dirt. But they are together in the sense of one is not separated from the other, but the two of them do have some delineation, some differences, in that dry land that he brought forth from the waters, or called forth, I should say, to appear from above these waters that he called the seas, these gathered waters that he gathered and called the seas. That dry land we call earth, but the earth term also relates to the whole sphere, this whole planet that we live on. There's so much there, but we'll move forward. So, verse 20. Let's move into the fifth day. Verse 20. "And God said," because we completed verse 19, which completed the fourth day, where God had created the sun and the moon, as it were. And then also it says, "And he created the stars," which we know are other, because the sun is actually a star, but he created the stars. So we actually, I didn't take you back to the original Hebrew of those terms. Let's actually check that out, which is before we even start the fifth day. Let's fully get into that. not fully, but let's get into that just a little bit. I don't know if time will permit us to fully get into that. But yes, let's see here. We'll say these lights. And then the stars, it says that he created also. And that's verse 16. So he made lights, which is Ma'or. I'm pronouncing that right. Light or luminary is how it's translated. And then it says these stars, which is Kokab. And it says star of Messiah, brothers, youth, numerous progeny, personification, God's omniscience figuratively. So moving forward, 5th day, verse 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life. So God is calling forth a moving creature that has life to bring forth abundantly from the waters. Then it says, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. So now it's the birds that fly in the earth, above the earth, or above the ground, the dry ground, but yet still in the planet, on the planet Earth, but above the ground, the dry ground, in the open firmament of heaven. And here we see this description. It says it's now calling this area in what we call the atmosphere between the earth or the dirt, the dry ground, and the sky, if you will, the atmosphere, because that's where these birds or these fowl, as it says here, would fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And moving forward, verse 21, and God created great whales in every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So now we see the sea life, or sea creatures, are being created, and then the flying creatures, or I should say birds, or fowl, as it says specifically, that have been created, winged fowl creatures after their kind. And then it says, and God saw that it was good. So he saw that it was good that this sea life has been created, and the fowl, flying winged fowl animals have been created. And God blessed them. Now that's interesting, because this is the first time we're seeing the term blessed. So God blessed the sea creatures and the winged creatures, fowl, and saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. So he blesses and also commands the sea creatures to multiply and be fruitful. And he commands, or he says, let the fowl, the flying creature, animals, multiply in the earth. Now it's interesting, it didn't say that the fowl were to fill the earth, but to multiply in the earth. Verse 23, and the evening and the morning were the 5th day. Now he completes that 5th day. But it's interesting, the thing that he saw that was good was the creation of the living creatures that move, which the waters have brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. He saw that that was good. And that ends the fifth day, evening and morning, the fifth day. It's very interesting. It's after he's created this dry land, called the dry land forth, separated the waters, or the gathered waters, the seas, from the land. He separates those, and then he brings forth and calls forth living creatures, sea creatures, from the waters, and fowl that fly in the firmament, in the heaven, in the sky, if you will. And he sees that it's good. And that completes the fifth day. And next time, we'll get into the sixth day. A lot happens there. Thanks for joining me.